episode with the first ever question and answer Warrior Poet podcast with none other than my man, Cory Allen.
Hello.
Offering the same but completely different perspective on life. Thought I would bring him in here. And of course, the man behind the curtain, the one and the only Orlando Rios, for a completely other perspective, should that need arise.
A Zen perspective.
Yeah,
completely
indeed.
silent.
Indeed. All right. Well, good to see you here, man. How you been?
I've been very good. Very good. How about you? Yeah, just off in the weeds of musicality, man. The sticks.
I hear you, man. I hear you. I saw your new studio. That looks sick.
Yeah.
Glad to see things are going well. Yeah, things are good here, man. Just, trying to find the balance between work and more work and a little bit of play and working out and making sure that keeping everything in harmony,
Yeah. Well,
that's the challenge these days.
Yeah, it's all the same thing anyway, It's just all being,
Yeah, it's true. You just got to choose which way you want to be.
Yeah, it's whatever the meat
try and stick to it.
Whatever the meat spacesuit is up to,
Yeah, just make sure the right captain is at the helm of the meat spacesuit. Let the parasite run things. Trouble for all. Trouble for the meat sack. You know what I mean, Cory Allen? All right, so
my meat sack is not troubled.
Your meat sack is untroubled? You have an untroubled meat sack? You're the only meat sack in the world that's untroubled.
It's because I just don't get invested in my meatiness.
You're just not attached to your meat sack.
Nah.
Yeah, well, that's it's not the easiest thing to do.
No, it's not. Actually, it's the most easy thing to do. That's why I love this the quote about if you the student asks in master, if I try really, really hard to and study extra hard, how long will it take me to be enlightened? And he said 10
Forever.
years. No, 10 years. Uh-huh. And he said, well, what if I actually sleep less, try harder than everybody else? Don't take meals. I just work and work and work. How long will it take then? He says 20 years.
Yeah. It's true. We have all of the capabilities right now to be anything that we want to be. We just have to decide it and believe it and release whatever attachments and everything else we have. But it's still not easy to do.
It's all the trying, man. You just got to get her on the other side
just
of the trying.
Yeah.
Just let go.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like opening your eyelid, You don't try to do it. It just happens. So your eye, observes the world.
Except when your eye is like really sticky and
there's
closed shut, or you got a black eye because you're getting punched by life repeatedly and you're all swollen shut. And then it becomes perceivably harder.
So, that's the work. That's where all the work and all the methods come in.
That's it.
Getting the crust off your eye.
And methods, that'll be something. I saw one of the questions that we have out here. So let's just start with that. One of the questions from Danny Buckler on Facebook, what meditation techniques do you have and have you practiced? So, Cory, why don't you lead us off on this question first?
Well, I think that there's like an infinite amount of meditation techniques and different methods out there that you can try. I mean, from Hindu, Buddhist, all sorts of Eastern Sufi type of practices out there.
What do you like?
I think I was gonna get to, like, I've really studied as many of them as I could find and tried them out, because I think that the only way that you're really going to see what works for you is just practice and see what type of results you get. I think that it's worth the while to read about all the different styles and techniques, try them out, make different combinations, and see what works for you.
Where would one read about all the techniques?
I mean,
Google meditation.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, Google meditation, or read any of the.
Do you have a particular book that you like that has kind of shown you the many different paths?
There's not one in particular. No, I mean, I've just, to be honest, I've read so many of them over the last decade that I kind of don't even really nothing really sticks out in my mind as what's important. But
so do the research. People know how to do that.
Just do a little research and find out what's good for you. For me, I think it's a mixture of breathing and visualizations at the same time are really helpful. I think that what I'll normally do is just sit and, I mean, to get started, meditation to people is this really difficult thing. There's all this baggage around it, like it's this big hard thing. It's really the easiest thing you could possibly do. And if it's intimidating, all you want to do is at first is just sit. Just sit for like even 5 minutes and just don't move. Find a nice comfortable space if you have a meditation pad or something like that. Sit down and lotus or zazen posture, which is what I prefer, and just sit. And
if you can't do that, just go in Indian style.
Yeah, or
not
Indian
everybody
style.
can go full lotus.
For sure, yeah. I'm just lock into full lotus and achieve enlightenment. It's easy. No, but you do that and just don't move for 5 minutes and just breathe. And then the next day, try 10 minutes. And the next time, try 15 minutes. And just breathing and not moving. And just from doing that thing.
So what do you do when the thoughts start to creep into your head?
You let them creep into your head because...
You don't try to block them at the door? Mm-hmm, you don't say, thou shalt not come. Pass? Yeah. What did he say? Pass.
Pass, yeah. Yeah, there's no way to keep your mind from not, throwing up little thoughts at you. But what you want to do is you want to let them flow by. It's like, think about if you're standing in a river and those thoughts swell up and you just allow them to well up and you allow them to move on. You don't hold on to them. Don't dissect them. And your mind will kind of tear them apart.
And that's exactly the same method you would use in a more, a psychedelic meditation, for example. The moment you try to really block some thought as it comes, you're going to get stuck on it.
Well, because by blocking it, you're acknowledging it, and by acknowledging it, you're grabbing onto it, and then it grabs onto you, and you're stuck together.
So let the thoughts come.
Let the thoughts come. Yeah, let them flow past, because that's going to happen, and that's like healthy. That's the way that the human brain works. But breathing is very important. You want to, if you prefer, you can just take simple breaths in, and if you get bound up while you're trying to breathe, you can try and count 1, on inhale, 1 on the exhale, 2 on the inhale, go up to 10, and then see if you can do that again, starting over from 1. When you get a little bit better at that, you can start doing things like inhaling and then, whatever type of mantra or chant you want to do upon your exhale, I find helps a lot. Because I think that in like yoga or something, whenever you're stretching, you're literally like pulling apart the fibers in your body where all of your emotional energy and different type of energies are stored. So in chanting, I think that the vibration of the resonance inside of your body really does something, for me anyway, of the same as like a yoga. And so
it releases some dormant thoughts. And so what is the chant that you like to do?
I mean, I like the classic Om chant, just a long one.
Old school. You're going old school with it.
Ram is a good one,
It's the same thing.
Yeah, Ram is like God in India.
Give us one.
And
come on. Give us one right now.
I will. Hold on. Just everybody.
You can't rush it?
Yeah, no, you can't rush it. Ram is a good one too. That just means God and Hindi, which of course God, they're not talking about a monotheistic God. They're talking about God as in all particles of the universe and the cosmos, That's a good one. And so also, like I'm loving awareness is a great one, that you can use any of those. So, as you breathe in, you let your stomach relax and inhale, and then on your exhale, you release your chant as you're exhaling. So I tend to do that.
And how long do you do that for? Do you do a cycle and then silence?
Yeah, exactly. So I do about 5-10 minutes of that, and then 5 or 10 minutes of silence. And during the silent periods, I'll do a little bit of just silent breath and visualization, and then I'll also, like, as I'm breathing, literally imagine anything you want, like a bunch of golden particles, or if everything you could see out of your eyes was like wallpaper and 2-dimensional, drawing that all in through your chest on your inhale. And the more you do that, and then you breathe that, and then if you can on the exhale, take that with the force of the breath up through your chest into your forehead. And then as you exhale, imagine a flame coming out of your heart. And all of the sharp edges and negativity and fears and anxieties and resentments and all of that stuff on the exhale. As you're imagining the fire come out of your chest, exhale all of that stuff and let it incinerate back into the universe.
You should make a meditation CD. We need to drop the Cory Allen guided meditation MP3. You got this shit down to a science.
Yeah, for sure. And this is just my favorite method. There's so many different things, but you try to do the.
This is just my favorite method.
It's just what works for me, And so you do that,
cool.
And that's very good. Also, the other thing I do is the witness, or in Hindi is the witness, and Gurdjieff schools is self-meditating or self-remembering. And like Buddhism, it's transcendental meditation. So you can do this throughout the day. This is kind of nice because people think that if you start getting flustered throughout the day, say you're at work and something happens and you get a little bit of anxiety or something, just a little bit of the witness. It's something I focus on all the time, or as much as possible, which is just the human brain has an interesting ability to kind of have simultaneous consciousnesses. You can have your mind in 2 places at once. And that's why we like to get drunk and people like to, just get fucked up in general, is because you've got the person that's driving the car and then the guy in the back seat that's just watching it all. And so when people get they get drunk or messed up or whatever, it's really fun because you're separating that consciousness, the observer in the beer, without any effort. You're forcing it, but you can do that naturally. And so what you do is whenever you're meditating, on the breath in, picture as if there's a camera like 6 feet up and to the right of where your body is, watching you in the room. So when you breathe in, just picture somebody, but picture the scene of you in your room doing what you're doing. And just do that while you're inhaling and exhaling. Each breath, just, imagine yourself. And I also kind of like picture my body as like is it stalagmites that come up from the ground or stalactites? I can never remember which ones come from the ground.
I think the tights come from the top.
Okay, so I imagine myself as a stalagmite, just like as I'm sitting there, there's all of the ground and all the things in my room, and then my body is also just a part of this like structure that's connected to the whole, room and time and space and everything. But you can do that in your car. You can be driving and just while you're driving, picturing yourself, a camera above your car. Think of this 3-dimensional view of you in your car driving, and just while you're breathing. You can do this like at the office.
And how is that helpful? Because it seems like that would further drive the separation. I mean, don't you want to ultimately bring those together, unify those fractal parts of yourself? And because that's when I'm the happiest, I feel like, is when I'm less fractal.
It's unifying the self. It's putting everything in its place a bit more. It's not about separating. It's about perspective, right?
Right.
So the more you get away from your like playing the character that's you get really caught up in being this guy in an office that's like trying to pound out his work or whatever, and that he's scared, and you just get so invested in the texture of the character of what you're being, and you're forgetting about the consequence of just being in general. So if you are, you're playing this role in this theater play of like this person, I'm this guy and I'm being this guy in this office, if you do this type of observational, this witness thing, you remember that, you are this guy, but you're also, that's just the most basic, like thinnest possible layer of the entire scenario, the phenomenon of existence. And if you by mindfulness, practice of the witness, you can observe yourself as this small fragment of this much larger thing that's existing, as a part of an occurring phenomena outside of just that character that you've written for yourself as being. And it's a really helpful. I made it sound really complex, but it's a really simple thing.
I see what you mean, and I think it's. Now that you explained it like that, I think it's an incredibly useful tool. I mean, being able to see yourself separate from yourself, to take a fresh lens of perception on viewing your own life is incredibly valuable.
Totally.
And that's really a big part of what meditation is kind of escaping that, whether it's psychedelic or whether it's just practiced and in your room or whether it's a float tank or whatever. You start to see a different perspective on your own life, how you're living it and what's going on. And there's a lot of blocks too sometimes that you'll get past. And then this happened to me recently. And you get past this block of what you've just... It's almost like you've figured something out, you think, so you just take that as an assumption of knowledge, like I am this. Okay. So I am this. And then all of a sudden you'll escape and be like, wait a minute, am I really that? Is that really what I am? Or have I just been telling myself that for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, whatever it is. And that's incredibly valuable because that's what allows you to course correct. And that's what can remove these blocks that are holding back unhappiness and feelings of unworthiness or any kind of negative energy are sometimes held behind these masks and facades.
Totally. And that's what, like, people get so caught up in their character, is like that this whole thing is just this drama, man. It's this cosmic drama that we're all playing these characters and these roles. And, it's challenging to change yourself when you're trying to go inward and make yourself better or evolve in some way, because from the perspective of everyone that you're interacting with, everyone in your life system, they've got their reality set up of like, okay, Aubrey is this guy that dresses this way and talks this way. Cory is this guy that does this, and so on and so on. And if like you show up wearing a type of like shirt that you're normally not wearing, if you show up wearing a crazy pair of shoes that people will be like, oh, hey, what's going on? Hey, nice shoes, man. What's going on there? And it's like, or if you show up trying to be, more peaceful, you've cooled yourself off somewhere with some meditation, and you show up and you've got this peaceful kind of vibe. People are like, hey, what's going on? Did you not get sleep last night? What? You're like, no, I'm just. This is a different aspect of the self. But people get so caught up with you're their character in their life script, and so whenever the character in their sitcom of their life is not sticking to the lines, the director, which is them, gets really uncomfortable.
It's
and
like watching.
Cut.
I remember watching. I started watching Entourage around season 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know, something late in the game, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So I had a cold or something, and I went all the way back to season 1, and it was like before their characters had really crystallized.
Yeah.
You go back, and I'm like, oh, he wouldn't say that. Yeah. Turtle wouldn't say that. What is he doing saying that?
Yeah.
That's not the character that I love. And I guess people, it makes perfect sense. People put you in those positions too, in the sitcom of their life. So any kind of change or juxtaposition that they don't like, hey, we don't like that.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why it is so hard for people to change.
Totally.
That kind of crabs in a bucket phenomenon where people want you in the places that you've put them
that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think that, if you are trying to work and, particularly with meditation, you'll seem different to people because you're like, wait a second, what's all this, this deep seated, connected internal like peace coma that you're. One of my friends the other day, and he was like, dude, you look like you're in a peace coma. What's going on? I was like, you just haven't seen me in a while. You got used to everybody else, man.
This has always been me.
Yeah, but it's funny that people, it does make people a little tweaked out, but you have to stick with it because they'll relearn like what you are and like who you are really easily. It's like it just takes a few so if you were wearing some crazy hat whenever I saw you, and I'd be like, oh man, what's going on there? And then I saw you, we had lunch next time and you're wearing it, I wouldn't think about it again because it's already been introduced into this episode of this sitcom. It's the last episode that happened already. Yeah. So it's just stick with the change.
Well, so just to make sure we get to more than 2 questions here in this, I'll go give my kind of rundown on my own meditation techniques. Now, Cory, I mean, just listening to you, it's easy to tell that you're rather advanced, and one could say that you're, on the path to mastery of this meditation technique. It's more of a challenge for me, maybe because I believe it's a challenge. I understand all the language surrounding that, but for me, it's harder. It's harder to get in there and do it. And that's why, people know me as a kind of a psychedelic entheogen advocate. And it's because for me, that has been a tool that allows me to really shut off, find that different perspective, go that different way. But that's not something that, I certainly don't recommend doing things illegally at all, if at all possible. That's why I go to Peru to do ayahuasca. I go to Costa Rica to do iboga. I go out to different places where I can find it. And that's not always available, and that's not always an option. So I do try to maintain a consistent meditation practice without it. So while I acknowledge that for me, those are the earth movers that kind of make the big shifts, the kind of daily maintenance routine. I go into my space, and I think having a space is really important for me, because then you start to build a habit with that space and with the things that are around you so that it's easier to slip in. It's like kind of like a worn shoe.
Yeah, it's a safe place.
It's a safe place. And so I have my little, it's a carpet, and it's a little altar of odds and ends that I've collected throughout my life's journeys in different places and mementos that are important to me.
Yeah, as a good
nothing
room.
that anybody else would find valuable probably, but like this is a rock that I picked up at this dry riverbed right after this significant change. So I have all of these things that carry with some weight, and I have the things that I like that smell good, the Palo Santo and the copal resin, and I go through kind of a ritual of lighting the candles, lighting the incense, and there's nothing magic about it, but it's all part of this ritual that kind of gets me into that state of familiarity.
Tone.
And it's almost tagging the experience with a smell. So if someone puts burns some Palo Santo, immediately my mood, my whole mental state changes, because every time I've smelled that, it's been when I've been going through this meditative process. So obviously if I burned it every time I partied, I started to get confusing, confusing messages.
Like, yo, let's hit the bar and get another stick of Palo Santo.
Yeah,
man.
exactly. So, and it can happen like that with alcohol. The first time you have a taste of whiskey or something before you're even drunk, it can totally shift your mentality just from habits. So for me, setting up that ritual, and then what I try to do when I'm meditating at my best strategy is to allow like the visualizations in my head to just kind of go. And of course I stay conscious of my breath, making sure I'm not holding it or just being smooth. But for me, the closed-eyed kind of visuals that'll come and go, if I follow those, that really allows me to kind of quiet my mind.
Totally,
these kind of pictures in my own head.
Yeah.
And when I can get to that state, that's really when I know that I'm meditating well. Mm-hmm. And I'm not afraid to I have a very difficult time falling asleep anyway. So I'm not afraid to lie on my back in Shavasana because Indian style or Lotus or any of that starts to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting.
So I'll get myself comfortable and then just, follow the pictures and the thoughts that'll come. And usually takes about 30 minutes or 45. I don't know. I don't really put a time limit on it, but you'll kind of feel when you've gotten to a point where the shift has been made and you're ready to blow out the candles and, kind of say goodbye to your sacred items and move on. That's kind of my technique.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was suggesting, the Zazen posture earlier. It's like a lot easier on your back if your back kind of hurts from sitting in a desk chair or something all the time. Sitting with a pillow, like with your knees in front of you with a pillow like over your heels and then sitting on your heels, that's like you can stay in position a lot longer that way. At least I find that.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Next question. Marcus Spalek, who I've been in touch with actually, he's trying to create a farm in Hilo, Hawaii that's going to be very conscious. They're going to raise food and kind of have a really conscious environment. So he's doing cool things. But he asks, what advice do you have for early stage entrepreneurially, ecologically, and socially minded people who want to help make the world a better place but don't know where to start? Do you have any thoughts on that, or I can start off?
No, I got a little thought about
All
that.
right.
I think that the thing, if you want to start on a path like that of either an entrepreneurial one or some type of socially or culturally conscious one, like the most important thing is to really think and find what the main interest and goal of all of that's going to be. Like, what is it that you're drawn to that you have some natural aptitude towards, and you kind of can't not get into it a little bit. It's like one of those things that, because all those things that they mentioned is such a broad spectrum of possibilities, but find something that's really, really interesting to you, that you really just naturally kind of have this magnetic draw to. And I think that's really important, because starting from the outset with something that's you've got an aptitude for and you're really genuinely interested in, it's going to make the long-term picture so much more feasible, because whenever all of the really difficult things start happening and occurring, because it will happen, like, any business, any type of movement or group you're trying to put together, the passion is there at first and it's exciting, but then there's always going to be a lot of challenges and a lot of things you have to, that couldn't have possibly occurred to you because you hadn't tried to experience that yet. And if your intention in all of that isn't an honest one, and you're not honestly, genuinely, really interested in what you're doing for the long haul, those things are going to be really difficult to overcome. But if you set your outset from something that's really a place of honesty, and you've been honest with yourself about, like, am I genuinely into this and drawn to it, then it's going to make all that other stuff not that big of a deal. Just little bumps.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. And I always go back to you gotta also prepare yourself for the task too. And there's two parts. There's finding the task, but then there's also preparing yourself, so when that task illuminates, sometimes it takes a while to illuminate exactly where that's going to go, that you yourself are prepared for that moment, and that, to really take hold and take charge of whatever opportunity presents itself. I know for me, I didn't know exactly what that was going to be until, a few years ago. And then On It started to take shape. The Warrior Poet thing started to take shape. I was able to get on, Rogan's podcast and tell my ayahuasca story and understand how that has impacted people. And suddenly the actual path itself started to crystallize. But prior to that path, it was just pursuing interests, gathering knowledge, preparing myself so that when I did find the path, I would be ready, that I would be practiced at, being the best human I could be, practiced at handling adversity, practiced at getting all of the skills necessary for me to be effective on that together. And I think, you work on that, keep an open mind, take the meditation, read a bunch, expand your knowledge base, try different things, but always with the attitude of trying to, put yourself in the best position possible. Eventually the path will illuminate. You'll find out what it is that you're really drawn to, both from aptitude and desire. And then at that point, if you've prepared yourself adequately, you'll be ready to just go.
Totally.
Just run with it.
And following your intuition the entire time is of the utmost importance.
And then differentiating intuition from that fear, greed complex that can come in too.
Yeah, that's where the self-honesty comes in.
And that's that can be a challenge. And again, meditation is a really powerful tool for doing that.
Just staring in the mirror for like an hour. That's powerful.
That's actually, so part of the iboga pre-initiation is, iboga is this 24-hour psychedelic. They prop you up and sit, and you stare into a mirror for most of that. You have your face painted, and you stare into a mirror until you can see what's behind you.
Nice.
like see completely through your body. And that's just one of the visual tricks that they're talking about. But really what they're talking about is full transparency of the ego, the self, and everything. So that before you're able to, kind of take other people on this journey, they want to make sure that you've seen everything that's a part of you in order to get through there. And it's an interesting practice on any psychedelic too, is to, take yourself to the mirror and really say, look at this human.
That's how I feel every time I look in the mirror. Really, I'm serious. Every time I look in the mirror, I'm just like, oh my God, look at that alien creature. This is so weird. I think I may have mentioned this on a podcast before, but like where I'm brushing my teeth or something like that, I'll be like, oh, the alien is scrubbing its head whole again. Yeah. It's so weird to just be this meat system with this weird open sore, this open like organic wound, and all these sharp pieces of calcium in there, and you get this stick and just like scrub it around, and then it starts like salivating, and like thicker liquid starts seeping out of it. And it's a really bizarre phenomenon.
It's quite an interesting machine. All right, let's see what else. What other questions do we have here? How can one change one's parents' attitudes to certain mostly illegal substances? I can see they need a spiritual awakening way more than I do, but I am silent out of respect. So the question would be probably broader, not just about psychedelic substances, but how do you, if your parents or some of the older generation, people with kind of like a fixed mindset, what do you think the best way and strategy is to kind of open them up to a possibility of a new kind of consciousness or a new awareness of something that they have clear bias towards?
I think that the most important
This is from Matt Zavada, by the way. Thanks, Matt.
The most important thing would be to be the message. Don't you're not going to be able to talk your parents into, in most cases, 99 out of 100 cases, you're not going to be able to tell your parents, your 65-year-old father is like, hey, I know you've been a banker your entire life, but you should try, DMT. It's just probably not going to work out. But as far as in the psychedelic part of it is, I think
I'd put the odds of that working out at about 1 in 72,000.
Yeah,
if I was Lloyd's of London.
And I think if we dig a little into the question and think about what the real intention, what I think perhaps that is being dug at, it's not so much the method, which would be the psychedelic, but it's the stuff that comes along with that.
Right.
It's like, how do you get a parent to be mindful, to open that, start thinking about energies and open their mind a little bit.
Self-awareness, consciousness, totally. All of that.
And I think that all of those things come from being the message. You can't be unconditionally loving towards somebody until you're unconditionally loving. You can't help somebody with their openness until you're open, you know? And I think that being those things towards them and not sticking to that old script of son and father or son and mother, because most people have this. You'll see it whenever families get together for Christmas. Everyone's in their 30s, but they start acting, they revert to that old model of how everyone acted whenever they were, you know, teenagers.
Yeah, those old
kids.
Relationship patterns.
Yeah, they just click right back into place. And it's a matter of being strong enough to make sure that you're writing a new story with them, you know, instead of going back into this old one. And all of those things you want to impart on them, that, and only in a genuine way because you think it'll help them and make them happier. You know, start being those things, and then you can slowly start, you know, talking about those things to them as simply and most succinctly as possible. And you know, it's a long haul. It's a long process, I think, to talk to a parent about stuff like that. But I think the more you stick with it.
Is it worth it?
Oh, well, of course. I mean, of course. Like, no, just let them die. Try again. You know? No, of course. Yeah. And even if you don't, you know, get, you know, it's hard to undo. It's hard to undo 60 years worth of programming and black coffee and cold beers, you know, but, you know, the more you know, it's worth, if you can get them to open a little bit, get them to relax and be a little bit more mindful, you've done a lot for them.
That's true.
You know, you've done a lot.
I think, you know, one of the, I've been hanging out with another guy, a really accomplished writer who's very spiritually, you know, wise in a lot of ways. And when he's aware of a lot of the Christian teachings, and his interpretations have, you know, really for me opened my eyes to a lot of the wisdom that actually could be contained in the Christian theology, as far as Jesus's words and things. And, you know, one of the things he talks about a lot is, you know, kind of, I don't remember the actual scriptural passages, but it's something about, you know, removing the ties between yourself and your father, your mother. You have no mother, you have no father, you have no brothers, you have no sisters. And it's all about basically removing those labels and bonds from these individuals. Just because you were born from a certain person, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to continue that forever. You know, you are independent people and can forge your own relationships as you see fit and as is best for both of your lives and the harmony of that going forward. You know, so, and having those kind of attachments can generally cause more harm than good. You know, so treat them as a person who you may love them. You could, everything, you don't have to lose any of that, but you don't have to abide by the label that birth and circumstance has created for you.
Yeah.
And then, so at that point, you can be more free to just, you know, talk to them as a peer, as another fellow soul on the journey, someone who, yes, you're very familiar with, and yes, you may love them very much, or you may kind of have some resentment or whatever issues you may have, but you can just treat them as kind of a unique soul that's walking next to you, not necessarily tied to you.
Yeah, you're just two beings.
Just two beings, exactly. And I think so making that distinction, I think, is an important one when dealing with the family. And then I think your point is perfect as well. Be what you're trying to express, you know, and be it genuinely. People have an eye to see genuine happiness, peace, and satisfaction. You know, if you're not living that yourself and you're saying, hey, you know, you guys, you got to be more enlightened. You got to be more conscious. You got to be more awake.
That's like when someone yells, calm down. Calm down. It's like, that's the most silliest thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not going to work either. Yeah. And then, you know, you have to kind of also, for me, from a strategic point, everybody's going to have the harder obstructions and then the softer obstructions. You know, for some people, a psychedelic is going to be a hard obstruction. It's going to be a real uphill battle to get him to accept that. If you do want to get him to accept that, you got to go the MAPS approach, which is just hard science. You know, show them the studies of the Johns Hopkins psilocybin, show them some of the end-of-life palliative care that's being done by NYU. You know, show them some of these hard clinical research studies, because even a banker knows to trust a double-blind clinical placebo-controlled study, and let that do, you know, some of the heavy lifting. And that's why I think the MAPS organization has done a great job, is because they're not just talking about, oh yeah, this changed my life, man. You know, they're actually saying, all right, these people were given placebo, these people were given mushrooms, and this is what happened. Yeah. And this is the reports, and this is the follow-up study. These are the side effects reports. So definitely take the scientific approach, I think, if you are going to breach that gap. And it's going to have to be pretty much all science and all logic for a little while. You know, like, don't give the heavy compassionate, empathic, cell before the science has kind of worked its way, softening up the defenses a little bit, and then later, perhaps, if you're being that better person because of it and you're really living that can be the blow that'll knock down the walls. But I definitely recommend the science first. But there is going to be ways that you can get people to that they're going to be a little softer towards. Like, for example, let's say you want to get your father in a float tank, talk about the physical benefits, talk about how it's great great for your joints, and it's really, peaceful and it's relaxing, and don't go deep into the spirit. Man, you're going to lose your mind and see yourself through a wormhole. And you're going to forget. Just don't do that. Just be like, let that happen, like get them in a comfortable position that it's going to be something that they enjoy, or, get them to yoga class. Maybe your dad be like, yo, it's really good for your body and it's fun. And then all of a sudden, the yoga and the shavasana, and they're actually going through a meditation that they never would have done, but you convinced them to do it just so that they feel better and healthier. And so I think a lot of those strategies can be important, but the core of it, like you said, is just be the change that you want to help people to change themselves. Very good, man. Very good. All right. Let's see what else we got. What do you think about education? There's a question from Ty Richardson. He's asking me about, why I went to University of Richmond and, how that was kind of preparing. There's a question for you too, about where we can follow you and what you're up to outside of Twitter. We'll get to that, Ty. This is from Ty Richardson. So basically, what's your kind of philosophy on what someone should do when they're choosing a school, what they should get out of a university experience? Because obviously the older generation, it's, oh, well, you go to school for something and then that's what you do. Yeah. You learn the skills and then but that's not really applicable to most people. I mean, if you're an accountant, you want to take accounting classes.
Yeah, or a scientist.
Or a doctor, you want to take pre-med. There's a few paths that you have to start at that point. But for most of us, it's kind of a free-for-all, and we still have no idea what we want to do.
Yeah. It's like, there's plenty of people out there that are, in their 60s that have had big, long careers and are still trying to figure out what they want to do now that they've retired. It's like, well, what was my passion again? As far as going to school, I think that I might not be the right person to ask, because I didn't go to college. I was too stupid. I wasn't.
Right. What was your decision not to go to school, though?
It was my main decision was basically that I'm such like a autodidact that anything I wanted to learn, I knew, within the framework.
Autodidact is someone who's self-teaching.
Yeah, exactly. So, I taught myself that word too. but anything I wanted to do that would be within the framework of interest or passion to me is not something like heart surgery or molecular biology or something. And so I knew that I could just teach myself any of those things. The only, all of the technical music type stuff, is I have an aptitude for. I was able to teach myself. And as far as going to school for like, philosophy or something like that, to me at the time where I was 18, I was thinking that I thought, well, that would be a possibility. I'm not sure what I would do with that, if I went to school for that. And also having being in a system where the idea of philosophy to me is breaking down and removing all of the walls of the frameworks of thought, and then creating your own idea, your own tone of your perception of reality. The notion of like putting like a pass or fail structure around that seemed really bizarre to me, and just didn't seem like, I didn't think I would like it.
Right.
So I didn't do that.
So now you're talking to someone who did go to school and graduate with a degree in philosophy.
Yeah, I remember that's why I brought it up. Yeah, I remember that.
So I think so for you it was a kind of a accurate self-analysis of what your benefits and would or wouldn't be. For me, there was some part of it that was caught up in the this is just something that I should do, and I have the opportunity to do. And I still don't know really what I want to do. And I think that's what a lot of kids are doing. And even people there's a ton of people who are graduating school and then going to law school. And I'm like, why are you going to law school? Like, shit, I don't know. My parents are paying for it, and I guess I'll go to law school because it'll buy me some more time because I know how to do school.
That's like friends with me that like just they graduate and then they keep doing artist residencies like over and over and over. I'm like, all right. I mean, it's cool, but at some point you're just wasting time. You're like, it's a method of escapism.
Yeah, and it's this kind of weird way to pacify other people's expectations by doing something. Hey, I'm doing something. I'm going to school. Yeah, and I think you generally want to try to avoid that. But what I did do that I loved about school is I just chose whatever the fuck class I wanted to do, and I just did it. I didn't really worry about what my degree was going to be. I ended up getting a double major in classical civilization and philosophy, and minors in I got economics and a English minor, and like a Latin minor. I picked up all kinds of stuff. I stayed there for 5 years. But what I ended up doing is I didn't really go after all these things. It just, by the end of the day, from taking all these classes, I had enough credits to do it. So I just wrote theses and got it all kind of marked out at the end of the day. But for me, I got to get exposed to a bunch of different cool things.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's all about.
Things that I wouldn't have thought to educate myself in, like symbolic logic. I really enjoyed that class, and it's basically taking logical arguments in English and reducing them to mathematical equations where you can work different things out. Really was useful in helping me think and build arguments, and that was one of the foundations of the philosophy. Some of the things I was exposed to in the philosophy of religions class was great, and I found great professors, and I ended up sticking with Latin just because in classical civ because I loved the professors and the stories they would tell and the things, and then I really enjoyed translating the Latin from the original, and it's tough to do on your own without a real teacher there to help guide you through translating classical Seneca into English and really understanding the entendre where he was partially criticizing Nero and then partially talking, and all the subtleties that only a real master would know. Some of the other things, even the creative writing classes pushing me to write things that I wouldn't normally have done. But when I was finished, I was like, man, that was sweet. Like I ended up writing like a 16-page epic poem rewrite of Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida, and
good one.
And I wouldn't have done that probably on my own, but things that I remember from there, and I got to do some drama classes, and so really for me, what school did is it expanded my knowledge base. It exposed me to different things. It taught me how to think. It taught me how to research a little bit, and it taught me some certain social interaction skills too that were important. Could I not have done that on my own? I probably could have, but I wouldn't have gotten the same breadth, and I wouldn't have found certain masters that I could really catch some knowledge from.
Yeah, instead of the symbolic logic class, I just read Wittgenstein like 30 times.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean it's interesting is that while you're saying that, I kind of remembered as I was a teenager, and I was like, I got obsessed into philosophy, like Western and Eastern philosophy, and psychology, and then like neuroscience, and I would just read those books over and over and over, and as many as I could.
Yeah,
and it was funny as whenever like I just. After reading like thousands of books on East-West philosophy and psychology and neuroscience, I met my current girlfriend, and she majored in English and communications. So what's funny is that she has a vast knowledge of literature, and so it was like, oh, this guy's really well read. It's like, what literature have you read? And I was like, oh. Wait a second. But an interesting thing is that I was like kind of before Google was like a verb. Whenever I was a teenager, like in the 90s, what I would do was I would read a book that was interesting, and then it was almost like a predecessor to links, where I would see someone talk about another book or another author that they were interested in, and I would go find that book that they had mentioned in that book, and that's how my web of knowledge kind of spread out like that, is that then this author would say, I read this, or they would note or like cite some other book, and I would go buy that book and read that. And it was just this thing where it just kept unfolding and never stopped. And it's kind of interesting is that's like links. That's like the internet, clicking internet links. So like recommended,
right.
It's like before that's like an analog version of
some of the best books I've gotten even still from that. You'll read some book and they'll mention something, and you'll get to follow that path down the way. It's a cool thing that authors do. I think I'm actually going to be writing a book in 2014, Cory.
Nice.
So
what's the topic?
Oh man,
sorry, I didn't mean to
yeah,
do that.
You know, I'll have to let the acorn grow a little bit before I start chatting about it. But you know, I think I'm going to start pushing into that frontier. But of course, you gotta keep the affairs in order here, keep the on it thing. You know, pushing forward and make sure everything is in a position where I can divert some of my attention and mental capacity towards that.
Yeah, it's a lot of a lot of mental real estate.
Sure, one of the hardest things for me is that patience of saying, okay, I can't do everything immediately. You know, just allow this to unfold. Allow that there will be several months before I can start on my book because I got the idea in my head. Like, oh, I got an idea for this. I want to do it now. Yeah. But the time isn't right. Yeah. You know, I have to take care of everything in order. So shelving things like that is often a challenge for me.
Yeah, it's funny I find with stuff like that, like, it's so easy to get so invested in like all of the surface type of stuff that's going through your head and through your life. And the more and more I feel like things are just kind of not predetermined necessarily, but I feel like it's just this path, this wave that's like almost written or something. It's like this flow where, you know, things when they need to happen, that they just kind of like happen. And as long as you're like riding that wave as opposed to struggling against it, like things will happen in time when they need to. And then later you'll realize why they happened then. And then you'll be thankful that they did. Yeah. You know, I really seem to be following that a lot more.
I agree. You know, I sometimes think about, you know, when I was 23, 24 years old, I thought I was ready to be where I am now.
Yeah,
I was like, what the hell? How come I'm not a CEO of a big company now? Like I can do it. I couldn't do it then.
Yeah.
It happened at the time when I would be ready for it, when I would be ready for the challenges and be ready mentally, emotionally, physically, cognitively, and have everything in place and be balanced and strong enough as a human to be able to handle, you know, the magnification that comes with, you know, being in this position. And, so things happen when you're ready for it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a quote from Castaneda along the same lines that say, you know, it's not the things themselves that change. It's you, it's the warrior and the perception of yourself that has changed, that allows those new opportunities to come.
Yeah. It may be like a testosterone versus new knowledge thing. But whenever I was in my early 20s too, I was like, you know, getting like lectures prepared for like philosophy, you know, on consciousness and things like that. Fortunately, there's no recordings of any of that. But you know, I think about like.
Do you look back at some of your old music and think that was cute, but or does some of it stand the test of time?
I see it all as like it's all. Yeah, I mean it's interesting to see the little seed, you know, growing, but it's all like a path. Like of course, you know, I could look at it and say, oh, well, technically or like, you know, theoretically or conceptually, those things are so much more, you know, shallow than what I'd like to think the things I'm doing are now. But I don't listen to any of my old stuff. I just like to, when I look back, I kind of just think, oh, that's interesting. It's like there was the baby steps, you know, but in like now, like with, you know, you're talking about feeling ready to write, or, you know, some of the music work I'm doing now, you know, I think about like, yeah, I mean, it's almost like this thing about trying to like, well, when I feel this, then I'll be able to do that later. When I feel like this way, when I feel ready, I'll be able to write a book later. But it's more of like about just being now and then letting those things kind of grow out of you when they do, you know, because it's like because you can end up like really getting into some challenging mental states if you're like, all right, now I'm the guy that can do this other thing. You know what I mean? It's like it's so much more organic than that. I think it's like letting you just come to you come to each other, the idea, the need, and the process, and then like what you are will kind of naturally connect, and then it will just start happening, man. You know?
Yeah, and that's kind of you know, the two ways that I think both me and you approach things kind of differently. You know, and it's. For me, there's that kind of warrior archetype, which is it's something that is helpful and not helpful, because sometimes the biggest way to fight and go out and go after what you're doing is just to completely let go. And that is the challenge. That is your fight. The fight is letting go, you know, and I have to remind myself that sometimes too, you know, and I think yourself and some of the other kind of really spiritually in touch people, you know, they get the letting go thing, you know, intuitively.
But yeah, but you can like let go.
right off the bat.
Sorry, man, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I was going to say is that you can like a really awesome thing is that you can let go and be super aggressive about what you're doing too. Mm-hmm. You know, like you're obviously very much more aggressive with like the type of things you're trying to accomplish. You say, I can do this, this, and this, and you know, you go do it, which is great and it's awesome. And you can do that. And you can also just like, and it's not like if it sounds like I'm saying I just like sit around and wait for stuff to happen, that's not what I mean. I mean that I do, you know, pursue things and make them and shape them and make them happen, but I don't get invested in the process of it all. It's like you can be that and be aggressive and knock stuff out, but it's not about, it's about like letting go during that proactive time, you know, because if you're trying to buy a house or you're trying to put out a record or a book or something, you know, sitting on the couch just meditating is not going to make it happen.
No, you gotta do it.
You got to get it
it's
together.
It's about letting go of the expectations, letting go of the ego, letting go of all of the other things that attach to it that will allow you to kind of let it flow out of you. Let the muse speak.
Yeah, and not being the guy that's going to go put out a record. Getting caught up in the identity of like, okay, I'm this guy. You know, I'm going to go play that role. It's like, no. That's just another trap, you know. You're getting lost in the illusion.
Yeah. One of the traps of many that are set for us in this world that contains us meat sacks.
Yeah, hall of thorny mirrors, man.
For sure. Well, hopefully we shed a little bit of light on a few of those thorny mirrors and gave some advice. A lot of good questions here. Wish I could answer them all, but we did go pretty deep on the ones we did answer. So definitely I like this format. I loved having you here. As always, Mr. Cory Allen, how can we keep in touch with you to answer Ty's question outside of just following you at Quiet Design? How else can we keep in touch with what you're up to?
Well, you can do that, the old Twitter thing. And, you know, I've been thinking a little bit about getting like a Facebook page and putting a little bit of writing and thoughts and stuff on there.
Do it, man.
Also some music stuff. You know, it's interesting is that I'm very much like just all of the things I think and all the things I do, my inclination to like make it public in this way isn't like the first thing in my mind. The first thing in my mind is to like be with whoever I happen to be talking to in that moment and be there with them and share like, you know, whatever we're interacting with. And, you know, I've been, you know, the more of these podcasts.
You can take that same attitude though and apply it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. Is that like, you know, you could do that on not so much of a personal level, but, you know, this thing with all of these humans, it's not them, it's us, you know, we're all part of this big thing. And so I thought about, you know, perhaps, you know, getting a page like that and putting a little bit of thoughts and writings instead of just
make it happen.
Letting them.
If you like Cory Allen, harass him on Twitter till he does it.
yeah, do it. Do that.
Just poke him.
That'll inspire me to do it. Really, you know? Yeah. So. But for the time being, at Quiet Design on Twitter.
Very cool. Well, thank you again, my brother, and thanks to everybody who wrote in questions. And I'll be back. I'll try to keep this Warrior Poet podcast going weekly for all you guys. Much love. Be good. Keep the faith in humanity. Adios.